Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe. Despite reportedly not wanting to appear on TV because he looks old, Vince McMahon still occasionally hits high spots backstage, where at the sprightly age of 75, he threw himself off the Performance Center balcony back in April in an elaborate way of calling the Gronk a who was having second thoughts about doing the spot for WrestleMania 36. But a couple of years ago, we may have had even more, as Kevin Owens has told Inside the Ropes that the original plan for his WrestleMania 34 match was him and Sami Zayn to face the father and son team of Shane McMahon and Vince. This, of course, didn't happen, with Vince eventually deciding to focus on running the actual WrestleMania show instead. Shane ended up tagging with a returning Daniel Bryan, who was only medically cleared just a few weeks before the show, suggesting the plans for Vince were in place until relatively last minute. The returning Mr. McMahon storyline makes even more sense with how the whole KO feud started, headbutting Vince on an episode of SmackDown, which was the last time McMahon got properly physical on TV. Elias debuted his latest gimmick tweak on Monday's episode of Raw, now teaming him with Jackson Riker. It's a skill he learned down in developmental, as he's told Lillian Garcia's Chasing Glory podcast, "I was put on the list to be fired multiple times in NXT for whatever reason." Apparently he was given an ultimatum, where one of the people that runs NXT commanded him to create a new character on the spot. Panicked, he did what absolutely any one of us would do, a stereotypical Italian accent. "I started yelling at everybody in Italian. I go through every single person. I'm just yelling at these guys, and I'm getting in their faces and whatever it is, and I sit down and I'm just looking at them, and Dusty Rhodes goes, 'Holy shit,' and Nick Dinsmore says, 'I got goosebumps.' And the guy that put me on the spot, he said, 'There it is. Who wants to walk with Elias?'" Is that racist? I don't think so. Keith Lee is apparently being reacquainted with the Performance Center as of this week, where he's reportedly back for extra training along with several other big guys after Vince had a tantrum about how his monster wrestlers can't work properly backstage. While it looked like Lee was being groomed as an immediate main eventer, beating Randy Orton clean at Payback in August upon his debut, there are now conflicting reports on whether Vince McMahon actually sees value in Lee or not. According to Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, Vince thinks Lee is not ready for the main event scene just yet, which he's hoping this extra Performance Center training will fix for an eventual big push. However, Ringside News is reporting, so take this with a pinch of salt, that Vince doesn't see it in Lee at all. Unfortunately, the latter seemed to be the case on last night's Raw, where he lost to Miz and Morrison in a handicap match. Let's unpack all of that disappointment while I review last night's episode in about 5 minutes. Thanks for your support on Patreon, Chris, the Cypriot Sensation Patrol, and the leader of the 314 crew, Elijah Zenselmeyer. The Miz opened the episode with a festive reading of The Nightmare Before TLC, where John Morrison played Braveheart McIntyre to be beaten in a historical pre-enactment with an actual AJ Styles, which, in a welcome change for Miz and Morrison segments, worked on a comedic level, mostly thanks to AJ being goofy and him throwing a Christmas tree at Sheamus, leading to Byron Saxton screaming on commentary, "Who throws a Christmas tree?" This made the night's AJ Styles vs Sheamus match start early, where Sheamus had momentum on his side until the roadblock that is Raw's new favourite time to go to commercial, that huge guy Omos doing something really tall. This let AJ work over Sheamus' left leg, eventually chop-blocking it and rolling him up to win in a decent match. To put McIntyre in extra TLC peril, Sheamus was then injured by being hung upside down in the ropes for Styles to wail on him with a chair, which Drew really should have come out to stop. I think Sheamus probably should turn heel on him at this point. Matt Riddle's bro stuff has actually been pretty funny these last 2 weeks, so naturally, WWE have decided to run it into the ground. Riddle tried to pitch bro-nouns to Bray Wyatt. He called Rambling Rabbit, Baby, Broder in your compulsory awkward WWE pop culture reference of the week, and we got Riddle calling himself Broy instead of Big E ahead of the New Day and Jeff Hardy match against the Hurt Business. How to phrase this in a way that WWE will understand? Bro away. They had a typically fun six-man tag where Jeff tapped to the full Nelson, keeping Lashley strong for an eventual Riddle match. They went too far the other way though, with Riddle beating MVP in under a minute, which needlessly undermines the Hurt Business leader. The worst thing in all of WWE right now, however, is the Lana underdog storyline. I wish it would stop.
Oh no!
That's right, WWE have somehow made this more infuriating. Lana got a surprise roll-up victory over Nia Jax in under a minute, which prompted Jax and Shayna Baszler to injure her leg so bad she's seemingly out of the TLC tag match. Then later on, Mandy Rose ran out to save Dana Brooke, getting beaten up by Baszler and Jax, even though their feud was meant to be with Mia Yim, possibly positioning her as Lana's replacement. So the last 3 months of Lana's character absorbing the entire Raw Women's and Tag belts, we might not even see the conclusion. Because Seth Rollins isn't around at the moment, Elias is doing his gimmick now. His music has saved Jackson Riker from Twitter, hopefully, who will now be his bodyguard as he beat up a bunch of 24/7 title-chasing jobbers. In an actual backstage segment that actually happened, Keith Lee walked up to Miz and Morrison ahead of their handicap match, flipped a coin, and asked them to pick heads or tails. They both picked heads. It came up heads. Keith Lee said that doesn't matter because they're going to lose anyway. What the was that? Even the coins won't put Lee over. Why didn't they use worked money? So it would come up that Miz and Morrison lost. And when has flipping coins been part of Lee's gimmick? This was baffling. And then it got worse. Yes, Keith Lee looked awesome throwing Miz and Morrison around. Yes, commentary put him over strong. And yes, he seemingly has a bit more anger in him, potentially foreshadowing that speculated heel turn. But similar to him tossing a coin backstage, it doesn't mean anything. Keith Lee lost when both men pinned him. Thankfully, one of the most charismatic, impressive big guys I've ever seen is being sent back to the Performance Center to fix how he flips quarters. Mace took on Ricochet, pew pew, with the biker mice from Mars on commentary next, which Mace won with an actually really cool super F5, like an F 9.3. Elise shouted that this doesn't end until Ricochet joins Retribution. I rate this segment mid-card. Rather than having an infinitely superior pre-produced Firefly Funhouse segment, Bray Wyatt cut an in-ring promo where his performance was great as always, but the material was awful, telling bad jokes about snakes. This was the most annoying Bray has come across since debuting his Fiend gimmick, which does at least confirm, yep, WWE really are booking him as a babyface. Randy Orton challenged him to a game of hide and seek, which started an hour-long deconstruction of making wrestling feel the bad kind of fake. Having Riddle and R-Truth interact with Firefly Funhouse puppet characters, and culminating in a rocking chair trap where Randy tried to set fire to Wyatt in a box for the Fiend to predictably jump out and mandible claw him. This might have been cool if WWE hadn't already exhausted my patience with the snake jokes and puppet spots. What do you do when you feel like SmackDown has overdone contract signing segments? You debut the Championship Ascension Ceremony. The Ascension return confirmed, because it's exactly the same, just with stupidly dramatic trailer music. After seeing Styles brutally beat up his best friend Sheamus just 2 hours ago, Drew McIntyre did his full entrance, smirked, and then listened to AJ talk for about 4 minutes straight. It's a real shame AJ versus Drew hasn't been better built, with the feud becoming cluttered with comedy and Miz and Morrison, as them wrestling each other for the first time is genuinely really exciting. The numbers game was too much for McIntyre, who was attacked by Miz, Morrison, AJ, and Omos, and in Styles used a table, a ladder, and a chair to put over this Sunday's stipulation. What did you think of this week's Raw? Let me know in the comments down below, and follow us on Twitter at WrestleTalk_TV to vote in our poll on a poll match, which had 39.1% of you rate it good, but overall weighted to between poor or terrible. I hated the Lana stuff. I hated the Keith Lee stuff. I found the Fiend Orton feud overly goofy, and while I'm into the main event match, I'm not into its story. This episode was a failure of a go-home show in my opinion. It's a very low poor.
Hey Ollie, I know it's TLC this week, and the other guy, he challenged you to a match for the championship. I just wanted to say, just came on here and said that I don't want to. I'm not challenging you for the championship. You know, I've put all that behind me. All that, we resolved that a year ago when we did Screen Stalker. That whole thing is in the past. I'm a good person now. We're, you know, straight down the line. We're friends. We don't need to fight over the championship. It's completely fine. And to that end, I was looking through my drawers and I found the mask. And I thought we chucked it out and I thought we got rid of it, but I thought it'd been burnt in the old studio, but it was there. So I've got rid of it. I took it to the tip and I left it there, and that's it. The influence is done. There's no more control of Fagador in my life. Hang on. Just got to close the window.
Laurie. You thought you could be rid of us.
I got rid of you.
Remember how good we were together? Remember the power?
You died in the fire.
Flames cannot kill Fagador. Come back to me, Laurie. Together, we could be champion.
No.
We could make everything Fagador.
No.
Yes. Starting with you.
What is the real reason for a WWE title change? Click the video on the right to find out. And what are the 10 hilariously worst WWE gimmicks? Click the video below that for Adam Blompier's latest list. Make WrestleTalk.com your homepage for all the latest breaking wrestling news. I've been Mr. Davis. Jam at jam.